Greetings, everyone. This is Jeff Wolferson, Professor of Physics at Luther College, bringing you the next in our series of what to look for in the night sky, the week of September 30th this time around. So basically, the first week of October. Good fall sky. It's a good fall sky. Let's take a look at what we have going on here. So let's start with Venus in the evening sky. A lot of times when I say October 4th to 5th, I mean the evening of the 4th into the morning of the 5th. And I realize what I mean here when I write this on the board is that each night on the evening of the 4th and the evening of the 5th, Venus is going to be very near Zubenelgenubi. This is a star we've looked at. It's a friend of ours. We've looked at it a lot. It's a star in Libra, and it's really special because it's very close to the ecliptic. The ecliptic can be thought of as the plane of orbit of the Earth, and then more or less the plane of orbit of other solar system objects, even though they're tilted a little bit relative to that orbit of the Earth around there. So it's not an infinitely thin plane, it's a disk. And anyway, what that means is solar system objects scoot right by Zubenelgenubi quite a bit. And we see them very near there, and sometimes we see them, especially the moon. We'll see the moon occult this star pass in front of it. It's a 5.2 magnitude star. That means most of us, if we've got good dark skies, can see it, but it's not bright by any stretch. We have to work. It's right on the edge of what we're able to see for most of us. If you have good, really dark skies, you can see fainter stars than that, good dry skies. But we think of this as a faint star. You got binoculars, going to help you out to see this a little bit. Each night, Venus is going to be close to that star. It's sliding by it. And it depends where you are when you're observing, when exactly it's going to be the closest to Zubenelgenubi. But at some point, it's going to be less than a degree away. Remember, you hold your finger out at arm's length, and that angle is about a degree that you're seeing for your finger. So Venus is going to be good and pretty close there. The moon is also in the region on these two nights. Very, very thin crescent. We talked about the thin crescent last week. So on the evening of the 4th, it's thin enough, 4 or 5%. It's really hard to see. By the next evening, it's going to be about 10% full, and we'll be sitting in this region below Venus. So you have a very thin, beautiful crescent moon, Venus, and the star right there next to Venus, if you can see the star. And so this is going to be, even if you can't see the star, if you don't have binoculars and Zubenelgenubi is below your threshold because you've got moisture in the air or something like that, light going on, just the thin crescent moon next to Venus on the evening of the 5th is going to be very, very nice. So that's what I recommend that evening, thin crescent moon, Venus, Zubenelgenubi on the October 5th. Jupiter's in Taurus this week. We've been tracking these planets. We've got a lot of planets to look at, so we talk about them a little bit every week. Jupiter, this rises by about 10:30, depending on your local horizon and whether you're talking about early week or late week. But by 10:30, most nights, it should be up for most people. Might be earlier than that, depending on where you are and what time of the week you're looking. It might be a little bit later than that, but not much. It's closing in on the Crab Nebula. We looked at the Crab Nebula not very long ago when I believe Mars was closing in on the Crab Nebula. So Mars and Jupiter are tracking prograde motion. They're tracking east against the background stars, and Mars is long scooted through this region. And Jupiter is there now, and it's going to spend the week closing down a little bit on M1, but we're not there yet. Give it another week or two and watch what happens to it as it gets there. But it's only about 3 degrees, a little over 3 degrees away from the Crab Nebula. So you get your telescope out, find Jupiter in the telescope, enjoy the view of Jupiter in the telescope, and then track just about 3 degrees, a few eyepiece field of views, depending on what power of eyepiece you have, to the east like that, and you'll find the Crab Nebula. And the Crab Nebula, it's a good dark skies this week, so you should have good views of the Crab Nebula and good to enjoy. Remember, the Crab Nebula is the remnant of a supernova that exploded in the year 1054. Large stars typically with masses 8 times the mass of the sun or larger, can end their lives in these massive supernova explosions. And this one occurred in the year 1054. There are records of its observation from astronomers, mostly in China. And so that we saw this supernova explosion in that year. So we know that's when this explosion occurred, and we see it as a nice nebula now a diffuse gas that's left over from that supernova remnant. But we introduce this now because Jupiter's just going to keep closing on this. So we'll check in on it, if not next week. I won't have closed too much by next week, maybe in a couple of weeks or a few weeks. We'll check in on it again, and we'll keep tracking it off this direction. Now Mars, we mentioned Mars scooted through here a little while ago. Mars is now in Gemini. We have the two bright stars of Castor and Pollux in Gemini, and we see Mars there. This is all above. Taurus sits above the Orion. So you go out and you find Orion, and you see Jupiter as the bright object, the brightest object that's above Orion there. And you can see, we'll talk a little bit more about where Jupiter is in just a second, but you can see Jupiter as the bright object there. Then you see Castor and Pollux as the twin stars over here, and red Mars sitting below there. So you've got Aldebaran in Taurus the Bull as the bright red orange star. You got Jupiter, and then you got Mars over here. Mars has been stretching out that. So you see those three objects more or less in a line across there. But Mars is closing in on Wasat. So you find Castor and Pollux, the two bright Gemini stars, and Gemini looks like strands of stars dropping down from Castor and Pollux. So you've got this strand over here from Castor, and you've got a strand of stars dropping down from Pollux over here. Mars is in the middle of those strands. It's in the middle of Gemini to start, about 4 degrees away from Wasat. But by the end of the week, it's going to be about a degree. It's going to be right on top. So this is a fun motion to track this week. Moving more than Jupiter because it's closer to us and it's moving faster. And so we see it close down quite a bit there on Wasat this week. Very close by the end of the week. We'll pick it up at the beginning of next week because that's a nice pairing of Mars and a relatively bright star. It's 3.5 magnitude. Okay, now let's go back and talk about the region around Jupiter. So Jupiter is here. If you go more or less straight north from Jupiter, you come to a fairly bright star that's also a friend, like Zubenelgenubi is. You get to El Nath, and this is a star we talk about a lot too. Also a good star near the plane of the solar system. It's the tail, if you've got the V of Taurus that comes out, it's the bright star at the end of the top prong of that V. Aldebaran is off over here forming the vertex of that V. It's about 6 degrees, a little over 6 degrees from Jupiter up to El Nath this week. You go about that same distance, a little less than 6 degrees, so a little bit smaller distance on up, and you come to this trio of open star clusters in Auriga. M36, M37, and M38. Binoculars should be able to pull these out for you. Small telescope, these are fine. As good as open star clusters get. Remember, open star clusters live in the plane of our galaxy, groups of a few hundred stars typically, but they can be bigger or smaller. And these will be great in low-power eyepieces in your telescope, or you should be able to see them with binoculars. So you move on up there. Now, that distance from Jupiter to this trio of open star clusters, you go about that distance again, a little bit less than 12 degrees, and you come to one of the three bright stars in this portion of Auriga. You've got Capella is the bright star. It's the brightest star. It's the famous star in Auriga. So it's the brightest star in the region up here at 0.1 magnitude. But we walk this line more or less straight up to get to Menkalinan, which is a 1.9 magnitude star, still very bright and a very good star. And then we drop down the other direction. We drop down over this direction to Capella. We drop down over this direction. We come to Theta Aurigae. And Theta Aurigae is still a good bright star. It's the faintest of the three at 2.7 magnitude. I just messed that up, huh? 2.7 magnitude is the faintest of those stars, but it's still good and bright and should be relatively easy for you to see unless you've got really washed out skies. Now Theta, if you have your telescope, you've been enjoying these stars, you looked at the Crab Nebula, you're enjoying these star clusters. Theta has two companions that you would see in there. One's way out there at 52 arc seconds, and it's a chance alignment. It's not part of a binary system, but it does have a binary component too at 3.5 arc seconds, and that should be, even under relatively turbulent skies, that should be something that you start to see as two separate stars in your small telescope. So it's worth checking out this binary star, this star that we see, Theta, right here with your small telescope. So you got Jupiter to El Nath, to this trio, M36, M37, and M38 of open star clusters, and then you hop that same distance on up, and you've got the three bright stars. You got a trio of open star clusters that has a little bit of a curve like that, and then you move on up that same distance from Jupiter, and you've got a trio of bright stars that has a curve in the other direction. And the leftmost of those stars, Theta, is a good star for you to be checking out, a fun star to be looking at in a small telescope. And that's what we got for you this week. Lots of planets doing lots of interesting things. The moon starts to make an appearance, but the moon is mostly gone this week, so we can see deep sky objects like M1, like the Crab Nebula, and this trio of open star clusters. And we can go check out a binary star right there. So that's it, everybody. We hope you're doing well, and we hope you have a great week ahead. And as always, thanks for watching.